Hello and welcome. As you can see, I'm not Matt. Matt has been trapped in the airport for 3 weeks now.
Well, thankfully, there's no IT issues to discuss. And also, thankfully, the world is a very robust place where one person accidentally pressing the enter key can't cause chaos across the world. You know, it's a really nice, simple life that we all live.
Obviously, Matt isn't actually stuck in the airport, but he was for like 52 hours or something ridiculous. Someone updated a software that turned out to be very, very, very deep in a lot of Windows PCs and, caused a problem that can only be solved by physically coming up to the computer.
And kicking it really hard to make yourself feel better.
Shaking it like,
For a little bit of backstory, right? CrowdStrike is a company who makes I would say antivirus software doesn't even feel like the right phrase. Like it's meant to be like an
holistic security.
Exactly. The security software that is very, very deeply embedded into Windows.
Kernel level.
All it took was someone at CrowdStrike to accidentally send like a bad patch, and suddenly hundreds of thousands of computers all across the world, largely used by major organizations such as like airlines and banks.
Hospitals?
Yeah. Instantly cause all these systems to blue screen because there was just one tiny issue, and then you couldn't even like restart your computer, wouldn't do anything.
It's in a boot loop. You would have to like get it into safe mode and delete the files. A lot of these infrastructures are based off of like very remote. The one person who knows how to do that is like having to drive miles. I do not envy any IT person having the worst weekend of their lives. If you're a big company, what you really want someone to be able to say, yeah, we got you. We're going to take care of your security. We're going to take care of your records, all of that. We can have it not be on Windows 3.1, all running off of COBOL in a single closet in Arizona. Good job, Southwest Airlines.
Sweet, sign me up. Until someone presses the wrong button and suddenly everything catches on fire.
I think so much of this is a desperate need for needing all of these tech interconnections, but also needing it to be someone else's problem because everything is so shareholder based. Ever since Google stopped not being evil, like even before
Once they decided to enter their evil arc, then everything just started going downhill precipitously.
It has not been for a long time about delivering products that work or help people or do the best they can. It is about delivering value and growth to shareholders.
Yep.
In theory, that makes a better product. But as we are seeing with the whole vacation, that is not the case.
We all know dividends make the world go round.
We've reached the influx point where they are now being incentivized to make things worse for consumers. The consumer, like, you're now the product. Part of this is like, okay, we're laying people off in these big firms, and if you want to show shareholders, hey, we're doing great, we're growing, first of all, you outsource your QA. So much of this involved putting a lot of trust in either an outside firm, or one of the cases we kind of looked at for this was the Linux XZ.
The CrowdStrike thing, to be clear, as far as we know, was an accident, right? It was just a bad update that got sent to a bunch of systems. There was another issue earlier this year with it's a compression format and utility for Linux called XZ, which is incredibly widely used. As you might imagine, lots of Linux computers out there, probably more than Windows computers when it comes to like infrastructure kind of bits. It was found that someone had actually tried to insert a backdoor into this incredibly important low-level package that lives on millions, maybe billions of systems.
It's open source. Why that's relevant to this conversation, even though it's a different situation, this one person started contributing a lot to this code base and
big old helper,
established themselves as like pretty much like the secondary big contributor to it, and then made alternative accounts complaining to the main person of like, we're not getting enough updates, this isn't stable enough, and to the point where that person said, okay, I'm going to promote this other person, which is then allowing this person to install that.
But this was like an actively malicious thing. This person very clearly spending years, tons of time, contributing good things, but basically to try to get the trust in the community.
Long con.
And then at the last second, they're trying to slide in a backdoor, which would have been catastrophic for millions of incredibly important systems. And it was only because someone just happened to notice that it was running a little bit slow, did a little bit of research and realized, wait a minute, what is going on here?
So much of like software has dependencies in open source. And that's not necessarily bad, but it does also mean a lot of big, heavy lifting in the tech space is being done by unpaid volunteers. There's an XKCD comic about it where it's like, oh, the entire infrastructure of the web is dependent on like some software package in Linux called Crunk by some dude named Chris who made it in like the 90s.
All it takes is for something to knock the whole pyramid of crystals over, and suddenly we're living in the Stone Ages again.
And all of it, I would say, is very heavily tied to how greedy these companies are. They are relying on this unpaid labor. They don't want to pay people to quality assure stuff. They want to be like, oh, I'll pay someone else like way less to do it.
This CrowdStrike thing was pretty much an accident. This other thing, when it came to XZ, was not an accident. That was malicious. But between these two, there are so many points of failure. Any one of these individual things, if they have an issue, a bad update, a mistake, or something malicious, causes absolute havoc.
No one heard of CrowdStrike outside of very like.
Unless you watch F1
segments.
and you're a big fan of the Mercedes F1 team, it's probably sponsored by CrowdStrike.
And that's fine. I don't think the people need to know about that stuff. However, you get all of these like data breaches and stuff. Fundamentally, when we are, using these devices and doing all of this stuff and basically forced into it, it's not like you can decide, oh, I don't want to use the app for this thing. Like you pretty much have to.
Yep.
You pretty much have to have your banking be online and all this stuff. But we are fundamentally trusting these companies.
Speaking of trusting companies, hello, Matthew.
Hi, Matt.
Hello.
How's the airport?
You escaped?
I did escape.
Can you tell us what happened when you tried to fly as the CrowdStrike outage began?
Have you ever seen an apocalypse movie and you don't know that something's crazy's happening, but you kind of see like the weird stuff?
The weird stuff. Yeah. I'm familiar with weird stuff. Yeah.
I was taking a red eye and I'm boarding the plane at like 10 o'clock at night. As we're in the line to board the plane, I start watching all the screens in the airport start to blue screen. So first you see like, oh, the gate one, like this is whatever. When things got weird was when the giant screen that has all the flights on it, when that one blue screen, and you just get the frowny face from Microsoft.
It always feels so condescending too, like, oh, I did an oopsie, and you're just like, shut up.
We get on the plane, we're on the runway ready to take off, and the captain gets on and goes, we're having a weird outage right now. I guess a bunch of our flight data didn't transfer to flight control. We need to do another bag count.
Because the weight's really important, obviously, when you're flying. They need to know exactly how much it weighs.
I land, it's like 4 in the morning, and it's been like 15 minutes. The captain comes on and goes, the airport didn't know we were gonna be here.
Oh, no.
I get off, it's like 5 in the morning right now. I felt so bad for the gate people because they're like, our computers literally don't turn on. We have no information for you. You're better off Googling what's going on because you probably know more than we do.
Wow.
Finally at 4 p.m.
12 hours later.
They're like, your flight's canceled.
Oh, you think?
There's like 3 flights worth of people at each of the terminals. I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I've seen this before. I know this is not going to get fixed right away. I'm trying to get a rental car. All the rental car places were down.
Oh, my God.
So then I called a bunch of hotels. All the hotels were down. I finally found a hotel that was in the middle of nowhere, 30 minutes outside of Atlanta.
They were definitely running like Windows XP.
The parking lot of my hotel was a bus graveyard.
How long did it take you from leaving your house and seeing the first blue screen to finally when you were able to get on a plane and get home?
54 hours.
So what you're saying is that if the entire world uses Chrome OS, that all these problems will be solved.
None of this would have happened, and I would have been home sipping adult beverages by the pool.
Well, here's the bad part. What we didn't tell you is that we got you a one-way ticket. The outages weren't all entirely your fault. It's also because when they tried to look up your return, there was none because we sent you off to upstate New York. We'll see you in the next 3 to 4 weeks when you finally get on the bus.
I'm sorry I'm not wearing a Genesee shirt.
Garbage plates!
You know what's good in ground beef? Cinnamon and cloves.
Blah. See ya.
He's gonna drive across the country and be like, Austin Evans,
This all is a great, very, very visual illustration of what can go wrong. there's nothing that like you and I can do about most of this, right?
Yeah, because as an individual, we're pretty much like at the mercy of whatever
Yep.
these companies want to do to deliver us on a plate to their shareholders.
Yep.
It's disconcerting.
Company's perspective, it's like, what are they going to do? It's like, it's our third party vendor or whatever, because everything has been outsourced and outsourced
Yeah, so
and
it's
outsourced.
the
So
other
it's
thing
like,
too is that you outsource doing all
our
of that. Not only is it not your problem, but when something goes wrong, you can hold your hands up and go, oh, well, the accountability is not with us. It's
but then who do you point
hard.
to? Okay,
Yeah,
so in this scenario,
it's
do you point at Delta
yeah,
for
like,
having, or do you point at CrowdStrike? Do you point at Windows? Like, there's
I
so
think
many, like,
you can share it, right? The only person that I wouldn't blame is like probably like the actual like dev who pushed that update, because the only reason that pushing an update like that can even do something like that is because of the way this is all set up.
Yeah.
Microsoft, definitely. It's gotten so complicated and interconnected that accountability is even hard. But it's like, unless we can come up with a scenario where they don't make money off of continuing to do this, so like maybe what has to happen is like more shit has to burn. It's almost like we need like a fundamental like re-angling of the entire tech industry before stuff is going to get better.
It's
yeah,
not gonna
because they're
happen.
making
Like-
too much money off of being bad.
Yeah, there's almost incentive for companies such as CrowdStrike, which of course we're really singling them out. They kind of deserve it 'cause they
they're
cause
not
huge problems, but like they're not the only ones.
They're just the flashlight.
Yeah, they're the ones who went, whoops.
They shot the flares up that made you go, oh shit, wait a second.
I would say that 99.99% of people out here there who are in the industry want things to work
Yeah.
and want, like, it's not like there's a lot of nefarious people,
Yeah.
but all it takes is a little mistake
Yeah.
or one actual nefarious person and suddenly it's a disaster.
Well,
right?
I would say
Like,
that also just like there's so many engineers both working for these companies and doing stuff in open source who are doing incredible work, especially the people who are being underpaid, people who are just doing volunteer work to prop up all of this. And then a lot of times too, those are the people out here talking about, here's how this works, here's what you should be careful of, and
Yeah.
we should listen to that.
Yep.
But then it's all of these people against the C-suite who's just like, well, I've decided that you don't provide enough value and
Yeah.
thusly like,
it should be a wake-up call for anyone who is in a position, whether you have a huge IT department, whether you have any kind of important infrastructure, any of this kind of stuff. Just think about the cost. Take Delta, for example, right? Who I think were probably one of the most hard hit. How many millions of dollars did they lose like that because one person pushed one update, right? We're talking about this is the best case scenario where it's an accident. What happens when someone actually is nefarious and throws something out there that causes like bigger issues? Why would you not want to invest in more of a thorough top-down sort of look at all of your various systems and all of these things, figure out what are the problems that can happen? It does not take much to cause enormous damage on accident. So what happens when it's on purpose, man?
I think that's what these companies thought they were paying CrowdStrike to do. Very few people actually understand all of it. It should be a serious problem,
Right?
and it's not being taken seriously because of
Yes.
corporate greed.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think if you take anything away from this video, just understand how precarious things are. Don't be alarmed. Don't be afraid to fly, whatever. I mean, obviously, look, things can always happen that are bad. Like, just you get unlucky. But like, I think that there's a real lack of appreciation for the enormous amount of work
Yes.
that volunteers do to keep society functioning as a whole. And there's not enough appreciation for how many individual little things can go wrong. And hey, maybe the people who, volunteer to make Linux work, maybe you should pay someone something every once in a while instead of just expecting them to do everything for free all the time. And it feels like the world would probably be a little bit more of a secure place if people put a little bit more emphasis on this. But let's be honest, is anyone gonna do it?
If we can align good product with profit.
What?
We're
You're gonna take away the dividends? How could you? Why would you pay the volunteers? Think of the shareholders. What about the dividends? What about the profit margins? I think Gemini can just handle it. Honestly, let's just give the entire world to Gemini. It can write us some great breakup letters, how it's great to put glue on pizza, and also it can tell us how to fix our Windows computer by restarting it 13 times in a row, and hopefully the blue screen finally goes away. Thank you very much for watching. Big thank you to Matt for not being here today. We really appreciate your contributions to really giving us a great demonstration of what happens.
First-hand account
Yeah.
of this week's tech news. Like and subscribe.
Or don't. Yeah, he'll do it for you.